All right, it's 1:16 p.m. and I will at this time call the meeting of the Great Sauble Conservation Authority for February 25th to order. We do have quorum, but we have 6 of 11 attending in person at this time. But as I note, we do have quorum. So first item is that we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all as treaty people live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Item 2 is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Are there any items to be noted? I will go to Vice Chair Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. So I do have a item of pecuniary interest. My family's farm received a stewardship grant that's on the expenses and receipts report for 6-2A, I believe. So.
Okay, thank you. We have that noted. Not seeing any other items to be noted at this time. Next item is item 3, call for additional agenda items. Are there any additional items from members this afternoon? Not seeing any. Item 4 is approval of the authority minutes of January 28th, 2026. Were there any questions? Is it yeah, I wondered because I don't have on my agenda, I don't have that as an item number.
It should be there. It's just a call for additional items.
Oh, my apologies.
Yes. But
You know what? There's no harm. Yeah, that's what I thought from memory. You know what? Let me just ask the members for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Member Urick has so moved and seconded by Member Day. Questions? Not seeing any. All those in favor? As am I, so that's carried with 6. Yep, thank you for noting that. We just did not see that on the published document, but no problem. So, any questions to the minutes of January? Good thing I didn't put that on the floor already. I'm just looking for a mover. Mover of receipt of those minutes. Member Dubik has so moved. Seconder. Member Bell has seconded. Yep. No questions further. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 5, sorry, is business out of the minutes, and I will just pass this to Tim to speak to one item that arose from those minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on the minutes from the last meeting. So during the last meeting, one of the items that we brought forward was an update to the personnel policy. And within the updates to the personnel policy, there was an item about staff getting first aid training as a required training for the authority. And there was a small discussion at the time about whether wilderness first aid could supplement standard first aid. And so we did reach out and check with WSIB on this, and they've let us know that no, it can't act as a surrogate. They're very specific about what the regulation requires. So just for information for the board. Thank you.
And were there any questions follow up to that? Okay, yeah, thank you for to the member for raising that question at the last meeting. Item 6 is the consent agenda. As we do have a declaration, would we like to just remove that one item and vote on it? Vote in the consent agenda separately?
would be able, or do you just abstain? Oh, because we have
We're
to sex.
Mhm.
I think we'll have to hold that item and vote on the rest. And we can't actually pass the receipts and expenses.
So we'll have to bring it to the next meeting.
Way to go, Jen.
Now, just one moment, let's just consult. Is it just a majority of quorum in place? However, okay, so there is a motion that in consideration of the consent agenda items, the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors receives the following items. And I would just like to note then in that motion, save and accept the receipts and expenses. We will vote on that separate due to the declaration of pecuniary interest. Were there any questions to items within the consent agenda? Not seeing any, so I do need a mover. Member Day has so moved, and a seconder, Member Dubik has seconded. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Subsequently, that in consideration of the consent agenda items, we will then deal with the receipts expenses, that it be received. Noting we've got one declaration from a member. Any questions to the receipts and expenses? Not seeing any. Do I have a mover for receipt? Member Urick is so moved, seconded by Member Day. And all those in favor? And that is a majority. Thank you. And we are then subsequently down to item 7, which is an orientation piece. And I see Ian coming to the microphone. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here today to give a bit of an update on the frazzle ice situation in Clarksburg that we experienced this past couple months. You may have seen that there was a flood watch, and there was a situation. It was the only area in our watershed that had frazzle ice. So just wanted to go through it a bit. So next slide. So frazzle ice typically becomes a concern or something that we're watching for when the temperature starts getting below -15, -18 degrees Celsius. And what's happening is that if we have open channels and we have turbulent water, then that cold, very cold air is mixing with the water and creating the frazzle ice, the supercooled frazzle ice. And the problem with frazzle is that it's very sticky, essentially. So when we have areas that are frozen over, then frazzle can stick to the bottom of the ice and reduce the flow capacity. I did want to note, because it was a situation that we occurred, but at the right temperature, snow that's falling doesn't, and you see floating snow in the river, it doesn't necessarily turn to frazzle. It's often slush ice, but it can contribute to it because you have it all sort of backing up, and again, if it's going through, it can form the basis of that frazzle ice to form as well. Once the river freezes over upstream, specifically in our area, when up by Slab Town and a few areas, once it starts freezing over, then you're not getting that frazzle ice forming upstream, which then comes down to create that jam. So it's just a little basis to on what some of the things we're looking at and to see it form. So next slide. Just got a couple of pictures to start, because everyone loves pictures. This is a view at Slab Town, and you can see something. There isn't a lot, but it's continuous. And you can see a bit upstream as well, floating in the river. So this is one of the spots that we're watching to see, is the section of river upstream of Slab Town frozen over. Once it's frozen over, it seems that the frazzle stops getting down to Clarksburg, and there's a lot less concern. But as long as that's open, we're getting the freezing temperatures, then there's the chance that it's forming. Another picture upstream of Slabtown is at Heathcote. And you can just see it floating in the river there. So this is, we're always looking to see how much is there at these times. That's not a lot, but it's, again, all contributing. So Conservation Authority, we have a water level gauge in Clarksburg that is actually in the floodplain. It's not in the river itself. Its function is to look for ice jamming. And the gauge actually extends. You can see there's a black pipe. The sensor goes 1.5 meters below the ground. So we are getting to, once it's starting to get up and spill the banks and come over to it, then we can start seeing a reading. And once we start seeing any reading, well, then we keep an eye on it. Most of the time through the summer, and we were not seeing any water on that gauge at all. So the intent of that one, again, we have a manual staff gauge on the side of it as well, to allow anybody really that's on the trail to be able to see that elevation as well. And also it helps us to be able to calibrate it from what we're seeing to what the sensor is telling us. Next. So on January 20th of this year, Jim McCannell from the town of Blue Mountains was the first to send us an email noting that there was a lot of frazzle ice that was being seen in the river. At that point, it wasn't really causing any issues. We'd seen the forecast knowing that the temperatures were going down, so we were already starting to plan when we were going out to take a look. So it was good to see what from the town first, what they're seeing. And then on the next day, the town noted that the ice was starting to back up upstream in the mill pond. The Beaver River, at that time, we went up to Slabtown to see, was it frozen over yet or not? Because again, that's one of the big contributing factors. If it was frozen over, I don't think we would have had the same issues that we ended up having, but it was not. It was definitely still fairly open. So, and then on January 22nd is when the wind chill temperature dropped below -18, and was staying below that level and much colder for several days. And it's that extended cold that really can allow it to form and build up and generate quite a bit of frazzle. Next. Just to give a bit of a visual, the start of the ice jam is downstream from where the area of concern is. And what happens is that the channel is more confined and narrow as it's leading up to Marsh Street, which is where the main bridge there in Clarksburg is. And then once it gets downstream of Marsh Street, then it starts to widen a bit. And then it gets down to sort of the mill pond and actually starts to braid. And there's multiple channels and it's spreading out. And so the velocity is being reduced. And of course, that velocity helps to flush the frazzle ice through it, because frazzle will go underneath sheet ice. But once it starts to get to where that velocity, again, it's spreading out, then it can start to cling and start to jam. So the ice jam started downstream and worked its way up. You can see the red dot there is where we have our gauge, just downstream of Marsh Street. And that's the location also that the town takes a long reach excavator in to try and keep the channel open. There's a section where a bit of a bend in the channel, and they try to at least keep that section flowing. And it in the past, it's tended to work. It's also one of the few areas that they have access to be able to get an excavator to be able to work along the river. So on January 23rd, we issued a flood watch for the Beaver River in Clarksburg based on the open river, the cold temperatures, and the fact that we were seeing it start to back up. It can back up very quickly. So we want to get ahead of it and make sure that everybody's aware. While it's historically occurred, we haven't seen the frazzle ice build up for several years now. In fact, since we've had the gauge in there, we hadn't had an issue. And then just to note that the area of concern is both up and downstream of Marsh Street. So you can see the large circle there. Where it is, it can back up on the houses downstream. There is concern that it can back up and actually spill over Marsh Street from the upstream side. But historically, it's been more sheet ice that's broken off and jammed in that. And that's why we have Clendenin Dam, is to try and keep sheet ice from from coming downstream. Clendenin freezes over and it can actually capture sheet ice, but it does not capture frazzle ice. Frazzle just goes underneath it and through. Next. Just a quick look at the, this is the chart that we look at. So we get this updated throughout the day, and January 23rd, we issued our flood watch, and later that day, the water levels rose by 0.8 meters. You can see that large jump on the left-hand side. The town had started their excavation work that morning, and then essentially it was just trying to basically, again, keep that flow through. You can see it's going up and down a bit, and as they were working, they were able to drop it that day a bit, and then it comes up a bit overnight and that. And then on January 24th, after it was dropping overnight, then the water levels rose again. And the yellow line that you can see there, that's the ground level at our gauge. So the picture I showed had the water level above it, and it was obviously after, again, that water level went over that yellow line. So it just allows us, it gives us a good idea when it's starting to rise, when it's rising quickly, and then we share this with the municipality as well, so that they can see these when they're not on site. Luckily, they are in town pretty much there, so they're able to go look often. But next. This is a picture. This is actually not this year. Most of the pictures we had this year, the excavator was not able to get out this far. So I did pick one from actually the same day, just 13 years ago. But there's a section, there's a pad that's built on the trail, and the trail in this case you can see is kind of underwater. Because for him to get out there, he had to go through a little bit. And that's the section there that they try to keep open. Other pictures I'll show, the excavator is back on the trail and it can't do quite as much back, but if we also can't have it get stranded out further. So next. So again, a view here, also the water was spilling over. Our gauge that I showed you was right sort of next to where the excavator is, but just again, another view. It's a walking trail at the end of William Street, and the excavator was in there. It's a lot of hours of just lifting frazzle ice out of the river and piling it up. So, and there you go. And reaching in, grabbing the frazzle, trying to keep a channel open. This is the section where it was spilling over the trail and that, and just trying to keep water moving. This is a view actually of upstream of Marsh Street. So it's just showing how it forms. Left some floating frazzle, that's all actually moving from left to right. And some of it will duck under and flow underneath the sheet ice. And others jams up against it at the end, and then it just keeps working its way upstream. And that's the concern, I guess, that we have really, is if it keeps moving upstream, more chance for frazzle to be able to cling to the bottom and slow flow. Next. January 27th, despite the cold temperatures, the upstream ponds and at Slab Town started to freeze over. So it was still cold. We were still concerned, but the water level started to drop. And again, that's when we went out to take another look, saw it was starting to freeze over. And then this concern dropped significantly. The water level still isn't down as low as we'd want. It's up just below that yellow line. But the risk of freezing, the risk of backing up because of frazzle is greatly reduced. We're going to have to keep a close watch on it when everything starts to break up in the spring. Thanks. Just touching on a couple of things. The communication in this, we're all trying to work together. We're all trying to share the information that we have and what we're seeing and everything. And town staff and GSA staff, we kept each other updated. Town staff were sending emails out to their management team twice a day, beginning and the end of the day, and they copied us on that so we could see what the town was doing. We have to make our own decisions on the flood watch or whatever notices we're sending out. But we wanted to work with as well, especially because we were referring to work that they were doing with their excavator. So to ensure the consistent messaging, we were contacting them. We were giving them the wording we were going to send out in flood watches, just to make sure that it was basically matching what they were saying from their communication. Again, consistent messaging from all parties, and we're all trying to work together on this. And then when they did decide to move, the town decided to move to an emergency preparedness meetings. Then we were included in that as well as the county and that. For me, daily communication was the key for everyone to be able to see it. We had our own staff stopping into the site as well, but it's really nice to see what the town is seeing and what they're planning as well, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Finally, the next steps that we're looking at is we would like to have a debrief with the town. We haven't seen this for a number of years now, and there was significant concern on the upstream side of Marsh Street that it might back up very quickly and spill over the road. So what options would be there to look at that? We want to have discussions on whether they would like us to have a gauge on the upstream side of Marsh Street as well, if that would be helpful. Because it can jam at the bridge, and then our gauge downstream isn't going to catch that. And we'll continue to discuss with the town staff how we can support them, because ultimately our job is to monitor, to send out the messaging, to provide the information on what may happen and what the concerns are, and provide that messaging. But it's ultimately up to the town to make the decisions on the ground and when to move to an emergency and that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ian, for the presentation. Good timely update, and good to have some real winter weather and see how you respond to the challenges from it. Member Bell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. So we saw the photograph of the post that has the monitoring station. So how does Grace Sauble staff receive information? I take it immediately. How is it sent? Do you read it, or is there a transponder? How do you get that to be current, to know exactly what's going on and when it's going on?
Thank you. So what we have is at the bottom of the pipe is essentially the sensor, which is reading what the water level elevation is. And then it's every 3 hours, it reports back to us. It's reporting it at more, I believe it's either 5 or that one is maybe half an hour increments. So we have more information, but it only reports back and updates us every 3 hours. So we know when that 3 hours is up, and we're immediately checking to see it once it comes in, and then it updates the charts and that. So it actually gets emailed to us, and then we are drawing that information from the email to put it into the charts and to read it that way. And I'd like to take credit for that, but John would have set up everything for all of that, so I need to give him credit.
There. Member Urick, and before you go ahead, Member Urick, I should just note that Member Farmer joined at the start of the orientation presentation there. So go ahead, Member Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good luck with those buttons. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, my question was along sort of same kind of wavelength. So on January 23rd, we went up by 0.8 meters. My question is, again, so every 3 hours, so it happens on a Saturday night. So is it kind of educationally, is this kind of a conscious effort on the emergency response team with the municipality in conjunction? Because if something happened on a weekend overnight and there's a big storm forecast and everybody's kind of on watch, who's literally watching it? Is this an alert system that it comes through, or who's literally watching that thing through the night to see if it's drastically rising?
So what we're looking at is what we're doing. So we do have staff that weekend at night, if there's an emergency, we will be watching it. We'll check it. In these cases, usually knowing that there's a situation, obviously we're checking it multiple times through the day. We'll check it at night. We'll check it before we go to bed. If we're not seeing things drastically rising, then we're not going to be watching all night. There is not an alert. There is not a sensor that goes off. And part of it comes down to, you know, again, we issued our flood watch. The next step would be a flood warning that it would go to, that there's actually flooding occurring in residences or roads are actively flooding, to go to that next step. So that's the main thing that we're watching for, is when we need to step up. But we're also trying to advise the municipality if need. They had their own staff that were going out. They weren't relying on us to tell them when things were going up. They would be out first thing in the morning and at night as well. And then it just comes down to when they are going to step that up into an emergency. So yes, we've stayed up all night watching the charts, seeing when they're going to stop. And that was last spring, was my first experience with that. Because if we need to wake up municipal staff in the middle of the night, we have the numbers to do that, and to let them know that something's happening that wasn't expected. In this case, it wasn't to that level necessarily. There wasn't a night where it was getting up to that point. Even with as high as it got, there was still room for it to go higher for there's overland flooding. There were some basements that were getting wet, but we're really looking at overland flooding. So.
Okay, thank you. Member Dubik next.
Thank you, Ian. So a question about Clarksburg. So Clarksburg has a history of ice frazzle flooding concerns. So when we do take a look at the wider watershed, are there any other areas of concern that could be prone to frazzle ice flooding concerns?
So there aren't as many. No, that's the main one we're watching. I'm not going to say there aren't some areas where it could happen. Allenford is another area we're constantly watching for ice. Usually, again, that's sheet ice that forms, gets a certain thickness, and then in the spring, as the water levels rise, it breaks up, and then it can go and it can jam against a bridge, and that's a lot of more what we're watching for ice jamming. The main area that we deal with it is where it's an actual concern is Clarksburg. So there, again, I'm not saying it's not happening in some other areas in smaller forms, but it's not such a major issue that we've seen. So for our area, that's the main one.
Thank you. Member Day.
Maybe. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Throughout your presentation, I kept coming up with questions and then you would answer them. So I really appreciated the depth of your analysis. I'm wondering if there seemed to be one of my questions was what next steps could be considered, especially by the Conservation Authority, which you answered with the possibility of a second gauge. Are there other best practices that other municipalities or conservation authorities are using that aren't listed here that would be good to be aware of?
So historically, again, Clarksburg has had issues with sheet ice jamming against that bridge. It has flooded over that Marsh Street Bridge, which is a significant amount of flooding there. Because of that, there has been multiple reports prepared. It seems almost every 10 years or so there's a report that was prepared looking at options and that. And so there's different ways. A lot of it is getting access to the river to be able to clean out a channel and dig it out and break the ice and keep that water flowing through it. The issue in the downstream of Marsh Street is that it's a very naturalized area. There's trails going through there, and it's a wider river, so you can't get access to everywhere. On the upstream side, there would be the potential you'd have to take down trees in a park to be able to get access to the river to be able to keep it clean. And my understanding is that's more what they have down in Durham, is a stretch that they can put 5 excavators on it to literally try and grab the frazzle as it's coming down and truck it away for days on end. So there's not a lot of options necessarily other than that, having to create an access in to be able to get the frazzle out. But there are other things that were potential options that were presented in those reports that keep coming up, but if they were great options, they probably would have been implemented. So.
Thank you for the question. Not any other questions to the presentation? Not seeing any. Oh, member Urick, go ahead.
Because it's our job to think of worst case scenarios around our various horseshoes and tables. So is there any liability on us for if that sensor fails? How are we aware if we're not issuing the warning? Is there any way that this comes back on us that says you didn't warn us and what's the ramification? Just again, just worst case scenario.
Good question. I don't believe we would be liable for something like that. This is one of the main reasons why we like to have good communication with our municipal staff, and we really want to. If something's happening, we'd like to hear about it. During a good example of it is during that episode, we actually got a call from Grey Highlands saying one of their roads is flooding. We were in the process of updating our flood watch in the next hour. And they said, we got a road flooding and we'd really like you to get a notice out that this road is closed and issue a flood watch because it was flooding over that road. So we quickly altered our flood watch to include that area. That's the kind of communication that we like to have. It's an isolated spot. We didn't have a gauge right there. We're not going to see it. So that's the biggest thing, I guess, that we really like to have is this helpful communication information we're providing. It's not covering everything, which is why we want to have that good communication as well. So.
Thank you. I've got two quick questions for you, Ian. The report referenced wind chill temperature as opposed to air temperature. Just wondered if you could expand on what impact the wind chill may have that the air isn't the component of the report. Second question is the Beaver River, did it go into winter and just like a standardized flow rate was low water volume kind of going into January or high, or where would it sit in the long-term pattern?
Not a frazzle ice expert on this, and that was actually a question I had because this is the first year that I've had to deal with the frazzle ice. But it did seem to be the references were to the wind chill. That is when that's getting down below, and I'm going to say -18 isn't necessarily in that it has to be at that, and that's when it starts. It's just an indicator for us that we use. But that's generally what we're looking at is if the wind chill factors are getting down below, because there was the days ahead of time when Jim started telling us that this is forming, it wasn't -18. The temperatures were more like -12, -13, -14, but the wind chills would have been down lower as well. So that seemed to be the temperature that's been often referred to, because that's that air temperature essentially that is hitting us. And the second question, I went off.
Was just on river levels going into January per se.
The river, it did stay fairly consistent throughout that entire time, in between about 8 to 10 cubic meters per second flow. There wasn't any large rise on that. It would be, I mean, as a winter go, it was probably fairly typical. I would think we didn't have, again, it wasn't that it was high and it was having to reduce throughout the time. So I think it's fairly typical. Winter flow wasn't high, it wasn't low.
Okay, thanks for that response. Not seeing any other questions, so thank you very much for the presentation this afternoon, Ian. Business items 8A is the 2026 work plan draft, and I will pass it over to Tim to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so this is the work plan that we're proposing for 2026. Many similarities to the previous year's work plan, but some key differences. So a few of the key differences you're going to notice in this is that they're all linked directly to one of our strategic goals, and then cross-linked to other strategic goals from our new strategic plan. And the reason for that is obviously we're trying to achieve the goals in our strategic plan, but also recognizing that actions that we take can have effect across multiple objectives. The next thing listed is the specific strategic direction, which these are also directly from the strategic plan. Then the specific strategic action, and a new item that we've included this year to be very, very clear and transparent about what success looks like is to include the key performance indicators of the specific deliverable associated with that. And then obviously, similar to last year, we've included the status and the percent complete. One of the other big differences you're going to see this year is that there are many more items on the list. So in the 2025 plan, there were about 45 or 50 items on the work plan. This work plan is about 140 or 150 items. There's two reasons for this. One, it actually better reflects the amount of work that the team is doing on an annual basis. So each department's annual work plan looks very similar this year to what it did last year, but a lot more of those items have been drawn out and put in the corporate plan because they help to demonstrate how we are achieving the goals of our strategic plan. And so that's exactly why we're doing that, is that it better shows those. So it's a very ambitious plan. I have a lot of faith in the team that we'll be able to accomplish this, and we have talked about it quite a bit. And you'll see that some things are already started on track or in fact do fully recognize that there's a loom of government disruption that could be coming very soon. But I thought it was important to stay the course, push forward. And if we need to change course because of something outside of our control, we'll do that. But if not, we have our work plans to go with. And it's also possible that those changes don't immediately impact all staff within the organization in terms of changing what they're doing on a day-to-day, but rather just upper management in terms of that. The final thing I'll say is that because of those proposed changes, I think that it's more important than ever that we demonstrate to the public and to our partners and stakeholders the volume and quality of good work that's happening from not just Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, but all conservation authorities across the province. And if we don't lay it out in front of everybody, it's hard for everyone to know exactly what's going on behind the scenes with organizations like ourselves. So I'm not intending to go through the individual items in the plan, but I'm happy to answer any questions that members might have about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And are there any questions? Member Farmer, go ahead.
Thank you. I was through the chair. I was particularly excited to see that a climbing plan for the West Rocks was on the list for this year. Over the years, I've had a few people reach out to me to say, why can't we do that? How can we do that? What's next? And I note that stakeholder engagement is one of the actions with the current phase of that project. What should I know if those people are asking me again? How do I provide feedback? Who do I get in touch with? Is there a process here? Do I wait for a press release about a public engagement, or do I pass along the email of helpful and informed staff at the GA?
Thank you for that, and through the chair. At this point, I would sit tight with it until we get to the point of public engagement. But if people are interested, I would advise them to keep an eye on our website, or if they're very interested, they can reach out to us and we can just put them on a list so that they're included when we do go out to that engagement. So we would already know that these are individuals that want to be included in these discussions.
Just further to that, then, do we also have a communications team that leverages Facebook or Instagram that that type of material may be passed to the public through, Tim?
Yes, I'm going to use the word team lightly, or loosely rather, because our team is generally one person. But yes, we will use social and our website and other forms to send that messaging out.
Member Yurick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, CAO. This is great. And I looked at the SVCA, they have a 23 to 33 as a comparator, just to sort of see what another CA was doing. Certainly not as extensive as it does break down, does get in some KPIs and does, but it is nowhere near as extensive in terms of the breakdown of the actual tasks that are trying to be accomplished. So I can't help but think that, heaven forbid, changes that do come down from on high, this sets up whatever happens for the organization to have a much better long-term plan and very extensive and detailed, so that anybody should be able to step in there and say, here's all the things that are need or will be done. I think it's great work because it is really comprehensive. So thank you.
Okay, thanks for those comments. Any further questions? Not seeing any, so there is a recommendation, whereas, Member Dubik, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll just echo those comments as well. The line of sight to the volume and the good work that's being done is critical. So thank you for that. And just wondering about, maybe just a question about the move, hopefully the completion of the renovation and the move. Do you expect any impact to the workflow here?
I'm expecting that the move in should be much smoother than the move out, and the move out was surprisingly smooth. Everybody came together and made it a really good move, and that was with, purging 50 years worth of things from the organization. So you can imagine if you move out of your house after 50 years, let alone an office where many different people have been. So moving back in, right now we've scheduled the movers tentatively to get us from office B, I'll call it, to back to office A. And then we're going to use a different day to move the stuff out of storage from the barn back into the building to sort of get a sense and a feel for where we're living. But no, we should be able to do that move pretty smoothly and pretty quickly. And I think it should be less disruptive this time. There are inevitably some challenges, changing IT and things like that, and everybody getting comfortable. But I think staff are already thinking about those types of things, and we've put together a small committee as well to handle the logistics.
Okay. So recommendation is, whereas the Board of Directors has approved the 2025-2035 strategic plan for the operations of the authority, and whereas the Chief Administrative Officer of the authority is responsible for developing short and long-term goals of the authority to support the strategic plan, that the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors accept and approve the 2026 strategic plan work plan as presented. Do I have a mover and a seconder? So moved by Member Farmer, seconded by Member Bell. No further questions. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is likely to introduce Allison at this time, which is the 2025 Q4 budget update. Welcome, Allison.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I feel like when I come up here with these reports that I'm just hitting the repeat button because they seem to be very similar every time. So this time I'm just going to highlight maybe a few last minute things that are a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. For starters, on the first page of the comparative, in the flood control structures section, just Friday, we learned that we got some WECI funding that John had applied for in January. So we got the news on Friday that we were getting some funding. So we've got $6,660 coming in from the province to offset some of the money that was spent in this department. And this department was over budget, so that reimbursement, so to speak, will alleviate that deficit in this department. The second item I wanted to bring to your attention was the WSIB rebates that we received this year. The first one was early in the year, it was in March, and I believe that came up in our Q2 report. But we got another one in November. So the overall effect of these two rebates is that our WSIB expense for the year basically has been refunded. So we have that deficit, or pardon me, that surplus to pull into the budget, which will alleviate our deficit for the year. We do have some of that left over at the end of the year. I got about $28,000 left of the rebate to use in 2026. On the capital side of our budget, we do look like we are underspent here, but I did want to point out that the budget itself has the whole cost of the admin center, and we're not all the way through the project yet. So we're not really underspent. We just aren't there yet. And that's really about all I wanted to point out with that. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks, Allison. And are there any questions on the report? Vice Chair Shaw, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Allison. My question is around, so for salary and wages on in departments like the water management department, are we how are those, are we allocating time between departments typically, or do we generally have staff who are dedicated solely to the department, and so that captures all of the wages and salary? I'm just curious across the budget how that works.
That's a very good question. And I would have to say that it kind of works both ways. Some departments do have people 100% allocated to them, and other departments have people that are shared. So for examples, our operations department, a lot of their wages are in operations, but they also do work across the watershed and across other departments. So some of their wages are in this department that we're talking about, the flood forecasting. They're also allocated a small amount to the flood forecast and warning department because they go out and do snow surveys. They're involved in the dams, so some of their wages are applied there. Some of our admin staff have a small amount allocated to other departments, but for the most part,
That question. Any further questions? I'm not seeing any questions. So there is a recommendation, whereas the Board of Directors approved the GSEA 2025 operating and capital budget in February 27th, 2025, that the Board of Directors receive staff report, which is the Q4 budget report, back as information. Do I have a mover? So moved by Member Bell, seconded by Member Uhrig. And all those in favor? And that is carried. And thank you also very much, John, for that last minute good news then on the wiki funding that was that Allison just spoke to, that I guess you just learned on Friday. So it's always good hearing all those last minute pieces of good news regarding the budget. And Allison, staying at the mic because you've got the reserve continuity report then to speak to. Go ahead.
okay. Yeah. So what we've done this year is taken the budget amount that we had across the operating budget and the capital budget, and we've shown that as a total of $2.1,289,000, and that includes what we had budgeted for the loan for the admin center, which was $2 million. So the difference is this was transfers to the reserves. So in the actual transfers, we have some differences over what we had budgeted. In our forestry, we have a larger surplus than what we were anticipating, and this was largely due to the timber sale that we had at the end of 2024 that came into 2025. Our vehicle reserve is a little, and that was, we're looking at about 46,800 as opposed to the 35 that we had in the budget. The capital projects for a parking revenue surplus is once again our good news story of the year. We've exceeded what we expected in our parking revenues. So we've got about $132,365 to the good for parking. One thing that I didn't include the total was the money that came in from the foundation, and this was the money that came in through Community Foundation Grey Bruce for the endowment fund that they have invested there. And that amount was $4,994. Some years we do move that into the reserves, but not always. So I had left the amount out because I didn't think we had decided whether that was going to go to education or whether it was in fact going to move to the reserves. So that was that one. And then the other amount that is currently in the reserves, just because of the way we've been handling the renovation. We got the grant that we received for the lift, $13,265. The transfers from the reserves, again, we had a few things that were not budgeted, and we had a number of them that we did budget that were projects that came in at less cost than what we had expected. So we have the water monitoring stations moving from the dam reserve. That was not in the budget, but was approved at an earlier meeting. The silt removal, this is the other part of the WECI project. So we had, we were going to take the 2,500 out of reserves for this part of the project, but the WECI funding will offset half of that. So we won't need to take the full 25. Our projects at Eugenia. This was from the capital budget, and most of those projects came in under budget. And then the admin center refurbishment. This is what we have spent year to date from the reserves. $1.234,697. I hope I said that right. The English Falls washroom is coming out of the capital reserve, and that's at $50,422. Source water, the source water risk management services. This reserve was built early on in our agreements with the municipalities, and later in later years, the expenses were not covering all of the costs, so that reserve is being depleted as needed. That amount this year is $29,697. And the remaining amounts are for parking, signs, flood control structures, and the Trout Hollow barn removal, which was not in the budget, but approved separately. That's a total of $594 that we're proposing to transfer from the receipts. Beginning balance of the reserves this year were $2.323,313. with the transfers in and the transfers out, plus the gain on the portfolio and the bank interest. We're ending the year actually higher than what we started at 2.506. Any questions?
Okay. I'll go to member Dubik right off the bat here. Go ahead. Nadia.
Thank you, Chair. So just two quick questions. In the transfers to reserves, the parking revenue, actual 132,000 versus the budget 35,000. What was the driver there? Because that's quite a difference. So just wondering if that's just volumes or if there is another driver there.
Yes, the parking revenues this year were over $300,000, so they were certainly higher than what we anticipated. Oh.
Thank you. And from the transfers from reserves, the education, so there's $0 actual versus a budget of 16,000. Wondering if there's any change to the education program that would drive that. Oops.
The education program was very successful in getting grant funding, so they didn't need to transfer the money from the reserves.
Okay, any further questions to the reserve? Balance transfers being contemplated? I'm not seeing any. I'm just glad of question. That's a great call there. It just continues to be exceptional in terms of the support from the public and the tourism sector, I guess, visiting the properties and seeing us enhance the experience for individuals that are visiting the properties, and also to be able to see the monies that are getting back placed back into reserve to support future capital work and requirements of the properties, because we know there is certainly a backlog when we travel through, and we know that the projects that are there that we'd like to do and have the funding that's available. So it's positive to see that transfer taking place. So we do have a recommendation that the GSA Board of Directors receive the 26 reserve continuity status and approve. I have a member Farmer and a seconder. No, they're being seen. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Our next item is item D, the volunteer policy.
Yep. So hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm going to speak to the volunteer policy. And this has been something we've kind of been, I'll say, talking about for a few years. And I think kind of understanding that we need something to kind of govern how Grace Sauble kind of treats volunteers, or treats is a bad word, but yeah, I'll say treats volunteers, how volunteers are actually like organized within Grace Sauble itself. To a certain extent right now, we have a ton of volunteers who do a ton of work, and we still necessarily have a handle on what everything's going on with them. So the intent of the policy is to kind of high level governance structure of that, and hopefully that's kind of what we're going to hit on. Kind of just hitting on the main topics on it. The policy goes through and kind of defines what a volunteer is, or how we're interpreting what a volunteer is. This isn't like a legal opinion or anything like that, but we're trying to hit on that. And so we have what a volunteer is, the different types of volunteers. So if it's an individual volunteer who wants to come out, say, for a one-day event like the tree sale, if it's a group of volunteers who want to do something, say the Arboretum Alliance, or the Friends of Haibu, or if there's a special project kind of thing like the Turtle Stewardship Group. So we have all those kind of laid out within the policy itself. And also then we're looking at it from a perspective of, it's almost like a code of conduct. I know when we put it out to staff for their comment, that someone came back with, well, why don't you just make a code of conduct? And I kind of looked at it and I was like, well, the sections are highlighting codes of conduct anyways, without saying code of conduct number 1, this, code of conduct number 2, this. So we are just trying to kind of make sure everyone is aligned that way. But then we're also trying to, I guess, highlight that the volunteers do put in so much effort that we do need to recognize that the important value that they do provide to them. So, but yeah, so it's, I guess if there's any kind of questions, I can answer them quickly, or I can answer for long, I guess, if you like, but otherwise, put it on the floor.
Thank you, Mike. And whether you answer quickly or slowly is up to you, but the first question's from member Farmer, so go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. A question about the representation of GSCA section, and I'm curious how it's been working so far when we have volunteer groups like the Friends of groups that the public might see as its own volunteer organization. The idea that someone who's been championing Haibu Beach since longer than I've been a human would need to double check the GSCA communications policy and go through, like, I wonder how what's being proposed for that chain of approvals reflects what's currently been happening with those groups specifically and their ability to speak for themselves rather than be representing GSCA. How is this different than that? And does it represent a big change at all?
Yeah, good question. It's not a huge change. I think we've just kind of really formalized it within the document itself here. As the document highlights it, we're saying to, follow through with our external communications policy that Vicky brought forward in the fall, I'll say. In terms of how it's been happening on the ground, I don't believe we've actually had any issues, but we just want to make sure that we do have something in writing saying, if it is a friends of group, they do say something that is completely out in left field, that there is kind of a recourse from Grace Sauble's side to say, like, well, hold on, this is not Grace Sauble's stance, and just trying to almost protect Grace Sauble in that case, from like a reputational standpoint. So.
And my second question, through the chair, the section right after that is dress code, and it highlights that volunteers are responsible for presenting a good image to clients and the broader public. I'm wary of words like good in circumstances like this, and I think the assumption can be that that's professional, or that's not vulgar, or that it can go in many different directions, and I wonder if there's room for that to be made less subjective or more clear in this process.
Yes, is the short answer. I can look to Grace Sauble's personnel policy and see the wording that we have within that. If that's how we like to go. I think the intent here was, yeah, so the volunteer isn't saying, I'm representing Grace Sauble and I'm wearing a shirt that says something really offensive or ripped clothing or something like that. It was kind of the intent of that section. But we can definitely amend this to look at different terminology, say, for.
Through the chair, I also think that might be tricky. I acknowledge rather that it might be tricky depending on how and where someone's volunteering, where making sure folks are wearing appropriate safety equipment makes a ton of sense to me. Also, the idea that if we're, I don't know, doing something again at Haibu that involves me going out into the water, maybe I might want to wear my bathing suit, and that would not be necessarily appropriate if I visit the admin center, but within the context of that role, it might be. So I will acknowledge that there's enough variety in the roles that folks might be serving that it might not be as clear as just pulling what you would want employees to be wearing in the office.
If I can respond. So the personnel policy that we have, it's covering all employees and not necessarily me sitting in my chair in the office. It is field staff as well and everything like that. So I think that'd be a good spot as guidance to start, but I'm not sure Valley looks like or Tim looks like they're have something at the tip of their tongue to speak to. So.
Would you like to address that? Because anything proposed for changes would mean that we cannot approve the volunteer policy as presented, which is the recommendation here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think we've left some of these things because it is a policy document and not a protocol or a procedure. We've left it intentionally high level so that it can be interpreted. Understanding that different people could have a different understanding of what a good image to clients is. I think there's a generally acceptable understanding of what it is and what that isn't. And I don't think we're intending to get down into the minutia of like splitting with a volunteer. I think it would be grossly obvious if we were going to invoke something like this.
Are you comfortable with that response? Okay, member Farmer's good. I'll go to member Day and then member Urick next.
Thank you. I think I'll support the wording as it stands. I've had some experience with dress codes, and when they get very specific, it can get very difficult sometimes. So I do appreciate in some ways the broad nature of the description here, where under the circumstance, you can figure out what a reasonable image is if you're at a beach or if you're in a board office.
Member Urick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, under the auspice of high level, the employees as volunteer section, I was just wondering kind of what the delineation is. I mean, it's always a good culture. I mean, I know this organization normally has its heart in the right place, and there's people doing things that they're probably not falling under kind of the true letter. So I'm just wondering what the delineation is there, and again, who that kind of falls to determine where that is, because what's overtime, what's volunteer work, what's expected. And again, I'm glad the part in there is without coercion, obviously. But it's almost another one of those granular fine points that who's the arbiter of what where that falls.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. It's the high level nature of the policy that we don't necessarily want to get into the minutia on that one. I think again, the intent on this one is staff, from what I've experienced, staff are more than willing to help out above and beyond, their scope or their office hours or whatever it is. And we don't want to try to restrict that, I guess. But also we want to highlight that it is happening, and not encourage it, but not discourage it going forward. So I think if there ever is a kind of a question, it would probably be going through the CIO as a first step, or like the management or coordinator kind of thing, and taking it up that way, that chain of kind of command that way.
Okay, not seeing any. Oh, member Dubik, I see you hiding over there behind the monitor now.
Thank you, Chair. So we do state that the volunteer base is very important to the organization, and the strategic direction is to improve the experience and satisfaction. So wondering if there's a process to gain volunteer feedback, and if volunteer satisfaction level is being measured or surveyed.
As part of the strategic plan, we do have proposed actions within that to collect input or feedback from volunteers. And as part of the development of the plan itself, we did reach out to volunteers doing that. So that is an intention going forward.
Okay, thanks for that question. Could you just expand on that or just hit on that again, Mike, in terms of how you've consulted with the volunteers in developing the policy? I know you represent in the Beaver River Watershed Initiative, for example. So just maybe if you could inform us all how you did consult.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we put it out to staff first, kind of the management side of things. And at the time when it was initially written, I was representing the Arboretum Alliance, so it was kind of brought up through them, myself that way. More recently, we sent it out to the leads of the different volunteer groups, and just said, you know, what do you guys see? What are we missing here? What are the high level issues? Again, not trying to get into like, well, you know, you used a comma here instead of a, you know, punctuation side of things. So that was kind of our outreach approach is going through the group leads versus individual group members kind of thing. And yeah, I think it worked out pretty well. We had everyone responded, which was fantastic and quickly, which was nice. And there was some good feedback and good conversations, I guess I'll say, within that. So
Okay, thanks for that. Good to hear. So there is a recommendation, whereas many individuals volunteer with GSCA completing various tasks, and whereas GSCA recognizes and appreciates the contributions of volunteers to improving GSCA properties, its watersheds, and the visitor experience, and whereas GSCA recognizes the need to clearly define the various roles and responsibilities of volunteers within GSCA, that the GSCA Board of Directors approved the GSCA volunteer policy as presented. Do I have a mover? Member Dubik has so moved, seconded by Member Farmer. Any further questions, comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Tim, or thank you, Mike. So we are down to an item under education, which is regarding day camp fees. And I see Gloria coming to the podium. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. So today I'm bringing forward a recommendation to increase weekly summer day camp fees for this summer, starting in 2026, from $285 a week to $300 a week. So this represents a $15 weekly increase, or approximately $3 a day for campers. The last time we changed camp fees happened back in 2023. At that time, we made an intentional structural shift to improve things like staff to camper ratios, make sure we were doing our due diligence in terms of safety. And we also had that shift where we had our education framework, and we wanted to have more of a specialized focus on environmental education within our day camp. So less of, say, a daycare type model or actual focused environmental programming. At that time, there was also some pressures in terms of finding, and there still is somewhat, but in terms of finding good quality staff that were qualified to run day camp. So what we did was we reduced the camper numbers from 30 to 20 campers. So at that time, fees increased, as did our enrollment capacity was reduced. So that limited our overall capacity to generate revenue. So there was that increase, and it was from $190 a week to that $285. Since that time, we have continued to experience some costs. We are very fiscally responsible in terms of expenditures, materials, and supplies. We really do make do. We find a lot of free special guests or ones that come at good costs, and we do weekly bus trips, but we have seen increases in things like busing and then also wages. We want to make sure we are staying competitive and we are hiring really good quality staff. So we are making an attempt to balance those increases in cost with accessibility to the general public and to our campers. From a financial standpoint, the $3 a day increase results in $60 additional revenue per day, and that largely covers those wage increases and any other sort of materials and supplies or other costs. The other thing we're doing this year is we are trying to bump up our campers, and so we're going to move from 20 to 22 with the same number of staff. So we have 3 staff, but we also have our environmental educator who's there for support. So we do need that extra support person in case we need to, say, call a parent. We need to have a camper come inside and someone sit with them, that type of thing. We have that additional staff. And then we also have a new program called Leaders in Training. So we will have those leaders who are essentially acting as volunteers, but they are trained, they're younger people who have aged out of day camp, kind of in that in-between age, and we are working with them to become good leaders. I did do another comparison this year, and when compared to similar programs in the area, the average cost is about $301. So we're right in that average range across Grey and Bruce areas for camps that are specialized. And this increase has already been incorporated into the 2026 budget. So we have already considered that change in revenue for our camp. So overall, we feel it is a measured and responsible adjustment, and it does balance that financial sustainability as well as accessibility to families. So I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. And are there any questions? I'll go to Member Bell, then Member Day next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Gloria, for this. I'm inclined to support this from the onset. You have asked for a very modest increase, and I would suspect that you have done some really good background research into the market, what it can bear, what we probably should be asking for. Is it enough, particularly when you on the first line talked about increased busing expenses? I know of some past organizations that I've been with, busing can surprise you from time to time, and you sit back and wonder, wow, it's just more expensive this time. And my real question, after all of your background research, you've asked the board to consider this very modest increase, and you just ended your remarks by saying you really feel it's good. Is it enough? And how do we look at our comparators for offering the service that we do for education and camp? I've said a lot, so anyway, thank you for your presentation.
In response to the busing, to start, I did actually have Chelsea reach out recently, and I did look back into several years of busing amounts, and they're actually the mileage has gone down with a little bit of an increase to the fees for the drivers. So it has fairly well balanced out. So not much of an increase this year for busing. And it's funny, some of the things that I would have expected between 2024 and 2025, there was increases in some areas, but not to others. As an example, it was more money to go to Bogner Marsh, but less money to go to the OEC, and they balanced out. So yeah, I think we're in a good spot. We do really want to remain accessible. It is tricky to compare camps across the region. We have some municipal camps that are very, very low, quite a bit lower than ours. And then we have those ones like equestrian and hockey camps, and and they're quite a bit higher. Those ones that are sort of outdoor adventure-y, science focused, that type of thing, are right in the middle, and I think we're in the right spot.
Thank you. I'm fully supportive of the price increase. I think it's very reasonable, and it feels very reasonable. I'm curious, and I'm not expecting the moon. I'm curious about how, if the increased staffing permitted or allowed for more support for youth with specialized needs, sometimes that increased need for supervision and assistance also leads to an increased cost. So I was wondering how you were working that balance.
I think having that extra, so in the past, we had 3 staff and no full-time educator. So we had another staff who was helping. Having our environmental educator there to support those 3 staff in addition to those leaders in training, it makes such a difference. And that's where we see the stress. So yes, there are absolutely those students with those specialized needs, or sorry, campers rather. And that additional person really does help with that. So that does increase costs, but we have that full-time staff person now to support. For campers that have very high needs that require, say, assistance at school, we do require that they have that person on site with them if they are a camper that would need that specialized support.
Okay, thank you for that question. Member Dubik next.
Thank you, Chair. So the Grace Sauble Conservation Authority education programs have a strong track record. So thank you for everything that you do. So just wondering about if there are any considerations for spots for families and kids in need. Is that something that we would consider as a Grace Sauble sort of program, or would that be more reliant on other community groups who would identify and then maybe assist? Thank you.
So this has been brought up in the past and suggested that perhaps we look into subsidizing some camp spots. We haven't done that simply because we haven't had the funding. And at this point, all of our efforts have been going into applying for grants that cover basically our staffing costs. Now, there are outside organizations that do subsidize those. Some other camps, like I believe the Y, you can apply for a subsidy directly through them. We do not do that, but moving forward, we could certainly look into specialized grants to cover, say, one camper a week or something like that.
You're good, Member Dubik. Okay, Member Ure, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a follow-up on Member Dubik. So I happen to be on the board of the Me for Culture Foundation. So HIBU comes to mind. We do subsidies for in-need families. So anything that has a cultural bent, and this kind of, culture is pretty loose terms. So you might want to look at that and consider that if you are considering an in-need family scenario, we could potentially entertain something like that.
Member Farmer.
Through the chair, just building on that idea, I wonder if it would be a low effort approach to also make sure that on the website that for registration, if we include an opportunity or a way for interested folks to sponsor a camper, then that it doesn't cost us any in advertising or staff time to go and apply for specific spots, but it makes it known that it is possible to do such a thing. And that perhaps even if that is something that the organization can do, then including that when the announcement of registration opening and new fees, that if a press release is being issued, that invitation to sponsor a camper would also be being, although I recognize that would be a rubric for or a lottery or something for how to then dedicate that one to X many subsidized spots.
I love that idea. I think in the past, if you'll recall, last year we ran March break camp and we didn't fill it. And so what we did at that time was reach out to the schools. They're an excellent resource. The staff in the offices and the principals know the students, and they're great for recommending campers, and also Children's Aid. We reached out to them as well. So thank you.
Okay, not seeing any further questions, and I think if you think about it, over 3 years, this is about a 1.5% annualized. I mean, it's not exact, but that's about what it amounts to. That's pretty fair and reasonable. So the recommendation that the Board of Directors approve an increase to the weekly summer day camp fee from $285 to $300, equivalent to $60 per day, up from $57, effective for the upcoming 2026 summer camp season. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Member Farmer is so moved, seconded by Member Day. No further questions, comments? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. And welcome to Mac at this time regarding permitting and planning fee schedule. report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, more fees. So what I'm bringing forward today is a recommendation to apply a 3.7% adjustment for inflation to the planning and permit fee schedule, as well as a couple of minor administrative updates, and for these fee schedules to be implemented March 1st, 2026. So just for a little background, if the board recalls that the province directed conservation authorities planning and permitting fees to be frozen. That came into effect in January 1st of 2023. At the time, we had implemented a fee schedule just prior to that that was developed by Watsons and Associates, if you recall. So we felt we were in pretty good shape to handle that fee freeze initially, but we didn't know how long that freeze was going to go on for. It seems that 3 years is the answer because December 31st, 2025, the latest direction to freeze fees expired, and no new direction was issued by the province. So effective January 1st, there's no fee freeze in place. And so if you recall too, the impact of the fee freeze, a report was presented to the board back in February of last year. We identified just over $30,000 impact for the inability to apply inflation-based increases to the fee schedules. So as a result, we had to make adjustments throughout the budget process to lessen the impacts of that. The current proposal that's before you today is a 3.7% increase across the board to the fee schedules. That 3.7% is broken down to 2% COLA that would have been applied for 2025 and a 1.7% COLA that would be applied for 2026 if we were able to do the year-over-year inflationary increases. We are missing a year where we could have factored in COLA to apply as well. But we felt that if we were to do that, we're getting upwards of around 7% of an increase. And we felt that as a one-off, that would be too much to apply to the fee schedule. So that's what we're coming forward with today. There's a couple administrative updates as well that we're proposing. These updates, they're in a way to try to lower for applicants in certain areas where we've noticed that there's less effort to review certain types of applications or proposals. So to summarize those, one is introducing a routine category for Niagara Escarpment Commission request for comments applications. So what we've recommended there is if I find it here, $235 fee category. And that's considered our basic level of essentially a desktop review of an application. So we felt that that could be applied there in cases where we've got a circulation for a Niagara Escarpment application. And the level of effort, once we look at it, is going to be relatively low to provide comments to the Niagara Escarpment Commission. I think staff, when we look at the Niagara Escarpment fees, that's probably the one that we've heard the most grumbling about from the public. Getting that request to pay that minor $765 or at the time $740 fee. So that's why we're introducing that one to try to keep that cost lower, as well as on the permit fee schedule, introducing, adjusting where the fill category volumes are aligned. So we're adding a fill quantity where the total is equal to less than 30 cubic meters to the routine project category. So that would be things like typical, basic levels of thing that could be done within a regulated area. And then that has an effect to adjust the fill category within the minor project category to being over 30 cubic meters of material, but under the threshold for a minor project. So I'm not otherwise going to go through each individual fee here, but I did have some examples of where projects typically fall within the fee schedule, just so you have a scope of where those projects are. So so routine example would include the construction of a removable dock. As you can see in the picture, that's pretty basic. the dock can come out seasonally and would meet the routine category. Next one is a minor project. So you've got a building or structure that's under 1,000 square feet. It can fall into the minor project category, typically associated with detached accessory garages or even small dwellings, if you're talking about structures. The standard example is more your standard type of dwelling construction. You'd be over 1,000 square feet with this, and then we're also looking at the grading work associated with it. And then a major example, which we see very few of these in our area, thankfully, it's why we think we like living up here, but large scale industrial type of buildings, which we do see being built, but they're just, if they're in a regulated area, it will be a major permit, but we just don't see too many of these. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Mac. And I'll go to member Day because there is some questions. So Tobin can lead off.
Thank you. Actually, comment rather than a question. I just wanted to compliment you on jumping on this opportunity right away. I know that your quick action in the past meant that there could be that one last COLA increase before the freeze occurred. And it's really great to see you get started on this where there's possibly a window where it's available.
Thank you for that. Member Farmer?
Through the chair, I think you spoke to this a little bit, but I want to echo Member Bell's question earlier of, is this enough after a prolonged period of freeze and the resulting disruption to budgets and the idea that the fee for a service should pay for the service? I believe that this is a thoughtful approach. I'm also wondering if you could pull out for us a little bit more about what that thought process was, knowing that that the legislative landscape is unpredictable.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we did have to think about how much we wanted to go with this. As I noted, we felt if we tried to capture a COLA for each of the last 3 years, that would be too much if we add it all up. Thinking about the people who are going to be getting applications, and also I think we get into that point where if we are asking for a lot, we need to start going to consult on that. So we felt that 3.7% was a reasonable amount. In that respect, it shouldn't be too much of a sticker shock, we think. And also we looked at neighboring conservation authorities as well. NVCA, they are applying a 5% increase, but I think that again is getting upwards of where we're not quite comfortable with the amount that's being applied. And Saugeen Valley, they did their own Watson's review recently. So their fee schedule is totally changing as a result of the Watson's increase. So it's can't quite compare exactly, but like I said, we did that exercise back in 2022 and got that in place. So it wasn't exactly 100% cost recovery the way it resulted, but I think we were in a much better shape than we were before. And I think being able to apply this increase now sets us up to limit some of that impact as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that question. Anything further? Not seeing. Any other questions? Not seeing any other further questions. We do have a recommendation before the board to approve the proposed 3.7% adjustment for inflation and administrative updates to the 26 planning and permit fee schedules beginning March 1st. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Member Bell, Member Urick has seconded. Any further questions, comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Mac, for the report. So we are at this time down to item 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a few things to update the board on, not a lot. One is a staff change. So the board may recall that we had a staff member that was heading off on parental leave, and that has happened. And so we've interviewed our new candidates, and we should be hiring very soon. So there'll be further update on that, but I just wanted to keep the board informed of where we're at with that. So that's in our conservation lands program area. Another item is the admin building. So I know Ian's been doing a good job of keeping the board up to date on what's going on with this. The work is progressing very nicely, and now that they're starting to complete some of the interior finishes, it's great to see. It's really coming together. A lot of the glass on the interior is up. Paint is in, a lot of the tile is in, so it's looking really, really great. The ad hoc committee had a tour of the building last week, so we walked them through it. Fielded any questions they have, make sure that in their role as the ad hoc that they know well what's going on, and I think they were really impressed with it. You have, I believe we're going to plan for April to bring the whole board through, so you'll get to come through before everybody else does. And it should be mostly done by that point. So right now, our proposed move-in date is the end of May. So mid to late May is when we expect handover. But by the time you see it in April, we expect that it will largely be complete. So some of the last type of things that need to happen that have a couple of weeks scheduled for our certifications like TSSA and CSA and things like that. And then it goes into May so that the roof and the exterior concrete work can get done. But I think you'll have a pretty good vision of it by the time you come through. So that's really exciting. And then finally, just to keep you apprised of what's going on with the changes to the conservation authorities, no news, really, no formal news at this point. But what we do know is that legislature resumes on March 23rd. So that's 3.5, 4 weeks from now. We definitely expect to see something in that time. Fully expect, given the track record of how we've seen changes come forward in the past, that budget bill, omnibus bill will be part of the release. And we've also heard anecdotally that we may hear something within the next couple of weeks. So that wouldn't be coming in the form of legislation, but rather presumably coming from the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. That's anecdotal at this point, though. Also, anecdotally, we've heard that about 4,000 comments were received on this ERO posting. If you've ever looked into the ERO before, this is a substantial amount of comments, and there's still legwork being done by conservation authorities, Conservation Ontario, and community groups to lobby against this. We are seeing some things come through from municipalities or partner groups suggesting how they see different consolidation variations working. But certainly what we've seen from municipalities largely across the province is that they don't support the consolidation of conservation authorities, and that rather we can achieve the province's streamlining and objective goals without doing that. So we'll wait and see what happens. We'll continue to talk with partners. We have been meeting with new partners that we haven't been meeting with before in terms of like the Home Builders Association. We have a meeting coming up with all of the home builders that will happen at the end of March. Mac and his team and myself will be going out to talk to that group, and I've already met with their executive director to talk about this issue and to talk about just broader collaboration and partnerships as well. So that's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Tim. And are there any questions? Not seeing any. So we will go down to the chair's report, and I can only report that I'm kind of speaking on behalf of the ad hoc committee that did have the tour last week of the admin center, and it is looking terrific. It's such a unique building, but the uniqueness was a special trait about it and when you walked in, and the challenge was maintaining that. And I think staff have done an excellent job working with LaBelle and Boulian, the architects, as well as the contractor, maintaining everything which is special about the building, and enhancing it maybe just a little bit in the future, so that if Allison's on a phone call, the whole building doesn't get to hear what Allison's phone call is all about. The privacy has been integrated seemingly in a really terrific way, and it's maintained the significant quality of the building in the inside. So it was a really good tour, and very thankful to staff for being able to have the ad hoc members go through at this time. So and still working within budget, tight budget constraints, and proceeding along a pretty good path, and the contingency is okay at this time. So I think that is everything I have to report here in the month of February. Are there any questions? Not seeing any. So at this time, we do have a short closed session this afternoon, and I would entertain a motion to move into closed session. Being 2:57 p.m., that the GSCA Board of Directors now move into closed session to consider minutes of the closed session of the regular Board of Directors meeting held on December 17th, 2025. And secondly, the 2026 CAO performance plan closed as it relates to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including authority directors or authority employees, GSCA Administrative Bylaw Section 4, and a couple Roman numerals after. Do I have a mover? Member Farmer has so moved, seconded by Member Urick. All those in favor?